All right, let's get into one of the most baffling true crime cases of the Victorian era. It's a story that has it all: a very strange marriage, a secret lover, and a murder that, according to all the science of the day, was just impossible.
And that right there is the million-dollar question. This isn't just a whodunit, it's a how-done-it. You've got a man who's dead. His stomach is literally full of liquid chloroform, but there is zero physical evidence of how it got there. It's like a locked room mystery, except the locked room was the victim's own body.
Okay, so let's set the scene. We're in 1886 London, and we're talking about a man named Edwin Bartlett, a pretty well-off grocer living in the Pimlico district.
So it's New Year's Eve, 1885. Edwin Bartlett, who'd been a bit under the weather, is suddenly feeling much better. He has a tooth pulled and then proceeds to eat several huge meals. I'm talking oysters, cake, a big stew, the whole shebang. Later, he asks for some beef tea to be left by his door. But at 4 in the morning, the maid walks by and sees the tea is still there, untouched. She gets a bad feeling, goes into the room, and finds him cold and dead in his bed.
The autopsy reveals something absolutely shocking. His stomach is filled with liquid chloroform. But here's the impossible part. Chloroform is a really harsh, corrosive chemical. Any medical expert back then would tell you that if you swallow it, it's going to cause terrible blistering and burns all the way down. But Edwin, he had no signs of that. None. Not in his mouth, not in his throat, and this scientific contradiction is what turned the case into a total media sensation.
So, to even begin to understand what might have gone down here, we need to look at the incredibly strange domestic drama that was playing out in the Bartlett house. It really all revolves around 3 key people. At the heart of it all, you've got Edwin, the rich but, let's say, peculiar husband. Then there's his much younger, French-born wife, Adelaide. And completing the triangle is Reverend George Dyson, a local minister who got very, very close to the couple.
And when I say peculiar, I mean it. This was not your typical Victorian marriage. Apparently, Edwin believed their relationship should be completely platonic. In fact, he not only knew about a romance between his wife and Reverend Dyson, he actively encouraged it. And then, and this is a big one, just 4 months before he died, Edwin changed his will. He got rid of a line that would have stopped Adelaide from inheriting his money if she ever remarried. The stage was definitely set with some pretty powerful motives.
So, with this very weird home life and a highly suspicious death, the police, of course, start digging. And the evidence they uncover against Adelaide, well, it looks absolutely damning.
Let's just follow the breadcrumbs here. First, Adelaide asks Reverend Dyson to get her a whole bunch of chloroform. To avoid raising any red flags, Dyson goes to a bunch of different shops, buying 4 small bottles so he doesn't have to sign the poison registry. Then, he gives the chloroform to Adelaide just days before her husband is found dead from, you guessed it, chloroform poisoning. As if that wasn't enough, police search the house and find a ton of medicine bottles and a book on poisons. I mean, come on, right? It looks like a total open and shut case.
So, yeah, it's no surprise what happens next. The authorities move fast. Both Adelaide Bartlett and Reverend George Dyson are arrested and charged with murder. A trial is set for the famous Old Bailey, and pretty much all of London is completely captivated by this story.
But just when you think you know exactly where this is all going, the story takes a massive turn. Because this trial is about to showcase a legal strategy so brilliant, it would dismantle what looked like a completely airtight case.
See, Adelaide's defense was being led by Sir Edward Clarke. And he wasn't just any lawyer. He was one of the most famous and respected barristers of the entire era, a true legal superstar. And his approach to this case would be a masterclass in the art of creating reasonable doubt.
You have to understand, Clarke was a pioneer. Back then, Victorian courtrooms were all about high drama, lawyers giving these big, emotional, theatrical speeches. But Clarke's style was totally different. It was quiet, it was focused, and it was based completely on cold, hard logic and reason. He wasn't going to get up there and argue about Adelaide's character. He was going to attack the science itself.
So the entire trial really boiled down to this one major conflict. The prosecution laid out all of its evidence. The motive, the means, the opportunity, it seemed like a slam dunk. But Sir Edward Clarke just kept hammering away at one single devastating question. Okay, fine, but tell me, how?
And this is where Clarke's genius really shines. He brilliantly turns the prosecution's strongest piece of evidence, the chloroform, into their biggest weakness. He gets their own medical experts up on the stand, and they all testify that swallowing chloroform is a violent, agonizing experience. It would cause immediate burning, violent spasms. There's no way you could give it to someone without a huge struggle. And yet Edwin's body had no burns, no marks, nothing. The prosecution had the murder weapon, but they had absolutely no theory for how it could have possibly been used.
And then, in a move that must have stunned the entire courtroom, Sir Edward Clarke rested his case without calling a single witness. He didn't have to. His entire defense was built on that huge, gaping hole in the prosecution's story. He basically said, "You haven't proven how this could have even happened, so you have no case."
So you're on the jury. On the one hand, you have this mountain of circumstantial evidence. On the other, you have a scientific impossibility. What do? What did the jury decide?
The verdict came back not guilty. Adelaide Bartlett was a free woman. The courtroom apparently just erupted in applause. Public opinion, which had been so against her, had completely flipped during the trial.
But listen closely to what the jury foreman actually said. This was not a declaration of innocence. It was, essentially, an admission of defeat. They were basically saying, look, we think she's probably guilty of sin, but because the prosecution can't explain how she did it, our hands are tied. We can't convict. Clarke's incredible focus on that impossible method had won the day.
And what about Adelaide? What happened to her after all this? Well, after she was acquitted, she just disappeared. She changed her name, vanished from the public eye, and took the truth of what really happened on New Year's Eve with her to the grave.
And I think this famous line from Queen Victoria's own surgeon just perfectly captures the legacy of the Pimlico mystery. For so many people, the question was never if Adelaide Bartlett was guilty, but how on earth she managed to pull it off. And because that question was never answered, it remains one of history's most fascinating and brilliant unsolved crimes.